The world of mobular rays transcends the barriers between oceans, the borders between shallow seas and cold ocean depths, and even the ocean's ultimate barrier, the one between sea and sky, found in tropical and temperate seas around the world. The genus Mobula contains some of the most incredible organisms that have ever graced this planet. There are over 600 species of ray in the ocean, but only 11 different species of mobile ray, all of which have a distinct diamond-shaped appearance with wings that allow them to glide through the water and put on stunning displays of elegance and agility. Some are small and congregate in incredible numbers, occasionally flying out of the water in acrobatic leaps. Others are absolutely enormous, so enormous that their elegance appears to defy gravity. The giant oceanic manta is the largest species of ray in the world, with wingspans that can reach over 8 meters. Their sheer size makes them a striking presence in the ocean, captivating researchers and divers who are lucky enough to encounter them. But more than not only are they enormous, but they are also gregarious and frequently as curious about human swimmers as the swimmers are about them. This is due to the fact that the giant oceanic manta is extremely intelligent. It is possible that they have the largest brains of all fish, with a brain-to-body ratio that surpasses that of the enormous whale shark. It turns out that giant manta rays are much more mysterious than scientists even realized until very recently. In 2018, scientists listed giant mantas and reef mantas under the genus Manta, but this is not the only thing that scientists have discovered about them. By analyzing their morphology and genetics, scientists were able to place them in the Mobula genus alongside smaller devil rays. Now, scientists are discovering that the giant oceanic manta is not the animal they once believed it to be. It is not simply a plankton eater that lives in shallow water. Rather, it is a deep-sea renegade with movement that is so efficient that teams of roboticists from all over the world are working to emulate it. Not only does it dive deeper than we ever thought, but it also moves more efficiently than we ever thought, which has shocked the science world. Giant manta ray have been observed to rapidly change the color and pattern of their skin, something that's basically unheard of in the world of elasmobranchs. The giant ocean manta is big, intelligent, and still absolutely full of mysteries. Why did the giant ocean manta ray evolve to become so enormous, and how does an enormous body move so efficiently? What are they doing when they dive to the cold, dark depths, and what does it mean when they change their color? As the giant oceanic manta ray glides through the water, it flaps its massive pectoral fins that give the impression that it is flying. When rays diverged from sharks approximately 200 million years ago, the pectoral fins expanded into what we now call the ray disc. For the giant oceanic manta ray, this expansion was extreme. Their wings can reach over 8 meters across, and their pectoral fins make up approximately 85% of their body length. In comparison, sharks of a similar size have pectoral fins that make up only 10 to 15% of their body length. However, what advantages do such massive wings have in comparison to the more typical sharkish body? Plan a hint emerges by observing the behavior of the giant manta ray compared to the similarly sized great white shark. The great white shark is a powerful, fast swimmer, but its bursts of speed usually only happen in one direction. It's hard for a great white shark to turn on a dime. Compare this to the giant manta ray. It's often seen swimming in tight acrobatic circles, circling back to eat clusters of plankton or to evade predators. Its maneuverability and agility are almost unheard of in such large animals, and it's thanks to the giant manta's large and flexible wings. While the overall shape of a man wing is similar to the wings of birds, these fins can undulate and bend in many more ways than bird wings can. The manta has numerous support structures inside the pectoral fin, and these structures can all be controlled separately. But as useful as maneuverability is for evading predators, it comes at a cost. Maneuverability is simply controlled inability, and without stability an animal can't move steadily and efficiently along a predictable path. Fortunately, the giant oceanic manta ray strikes a balance between these opposing qualities and is maneuverable while also maintaining stability and efficiency. One of the ways that the giant manta ray maintains stability is by having wings with a fairly high aspect ratio during flight in the sea or in the sky. Wings that are longer and narrower give a plane or manta more stability. It's kind of like a tight RPP walker who holds a long pole as they walk. The extra length helps balance the body. Although the wings of the giant manta ray aren't exactly long and skinny like glider wings, their length does help. High aspect ratio wings also help generate lift efficiently, and the way the giant manta ray moves its pectoral fins also allows it to swim in a manner that is highly efficient and sometimes surprisingly fast. On average, giant manta rays swim at a speed of approximately 9 miles per hour, which is equivalent to 14.5 kilometers per hour. However, in order to avoid danger, they can sprint as fast as 22 miles per hour, which is equivalent to 35 miles per hour. They use a combination of fin oscillations and undulations to achieve these speeds. Oscillations are the flapping of the wing up and down, which generates large propulsive and lift forces. However, at the same time that the wing is oscillating up and down, it is also undulating, sending a traveling wave outwards from its body towards its flexible wing tips as giant rays flap. In this manner, their fins disturb the water and create vortices, which push against the water around them and propel the animal forward. These two types of motion are what allow them to achieve these speeds. Motion makes the giant Manta an extremely efficient swimmer. Scientists have measured the propellant efficiency to be 89%. In order to gain a better understanding of the biology of manta rays, I had a conversation with Jessica Pate, the founder of the Florida Manta Project and a research scientist at the Marine Megap Foundation. Basically, manta rays are designed to swim because they are required to keep swimming in order to breathe. You will never see one of them resting on the bottom because they are designed to swim. They are just designed to be very hydrodynamically efficient. They have a more pointed diamond-shaped body structure where normally like a stingray that lives on the bottom is going to be just more like round, so they can get a lot more power out of their wing tips. It's so powerful and efficient that researchers are designing underwater autonomous vehicles modeled after giant manis. They hope that these bio-inspired machines will be able to help map the sea floor, perform search and rescue missions, and inspect underwater technology far more nimbly and efficiently than current systems based on their pancake-like shape and flapping wings. You might assume that mobulas are a bigger version of stingrays. It's true that all of them belong to the elasmo brand subclass of cartilaginous fish, as do shark and skates, but there are some significant differences between mobulas and stingrays. Mobulas have mouths on the front of their bodies rather than underneath. They also have calyx, which are two fin-like appendages around their mouths. Unlike the anterior part of most stingrays, these calyx do not have any electrosensory abilities. Rather, they're there to help funnel water and plankton straight into their mouths. The calyx make mobular rays the only vertebrate with 6 paired appendages rather than 4, 2 by their mouth, 2 pectoral fins that act as their wings, and 2 pelvic fins at the back. And while stingrays have long stingers in most Mulus species, including the giant manta rays, their tails have lost their ability to sting, and sometimes people don't realize music. But one of their other differences is something you can't see unless you get up close and personal with either of these animals, and that's their teeth. Stingrays have crushing teeth plates that help them feed on crustaceans and fish. Mobular rays, on the other hand, only have teeth on their lower jaw, and these are small peg-shaped uneven teeth, pretty useless for chewing. Today they're only used for mating when males latch on to females instead of crushing their prey. Manta rays are filter feeders. When plankton is abundant, they open their mouths and swim through it. There's no sucking, and everything in their path just travels into the large oral cavity and passes through their gill rockers. Manta rays are like giant flying colanders, filtering out the tasty bits. This transition from grinding teeth to filter feeding dates back to sometime before 50 million years ago in the fossil record, perhaps after the extinction of the dinosaurs 66 million years ago, when other ocean-dwelling planktivores disappeared, opening up a large environmental niche. There was also a geologic event called the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum about 55 million years ago, in which global temperatures increased from 5 to 8 degrees Celsius, leading to a boom in plankton growth. Whatever the reason, mantras became voracious plankton eaters, and because of this, something else remarkable occurred. Manta rays became giants. But how is it that a diet of tiny plankton pushed these creatures to become so big? Researchers have found that gigantism isn't limited by the trophic level, aka which type of food an animal is eating, but rather by the quality and abundance of that food and the animal's ability to exploit it. There is a biological theory about this concept that is called Kopp's rule. It hypothesizes that evolutionary lineages tend to increase in size over time because being larger improves survival for apex carnivores. However, this is only true up to a certain point. There is not much point in being larger than a size where you have no enemies and can prey on anything you want. However, for plankton eaters, being larger is almost always better because being massive gives them an increased foraging range, because greater swimming efficiency enables them to travel further in search of food. Plankton and greater energy storage. Traveling farther between patches of rich feeding grounds. A larger mouth and increased surface area also allows them to process much more water and gather much more plankton, and perhaps the biggest advantage of being so large is that you're less likely to be eaten. When manta rays are full-grown adults, they have very few predators. Really, it's only orcas. There is actually a recent orca predation in Hawaii on a manta or large sharks in Mozambique. One of our study sites they have a very healthy bull shark population, and approximately 75 to 80% of their mantas have shark bites, but they are surviving because they are only taking small chunks out of the back. However, history has shown us that large animals are more likely to go extinct. This is due to the fact that large organisms are frequently more susceptible to environmental crises due to their need for more resources, such as food, as well as their lengthy reproductive phases. Also, organisms that reproduce in the span of a few weeks are much more likely to undergo rapid evolution than something like a manta, which can only reproduce for a short period of time. In general, when you have that kind of strategy, you have higher survivorship because you are basically putting all of your eggs in this one reproductive basket. But for the giant manai, being gigantic and eating a lot of plankton has so far been worth the risk, and for a long time, it has been worth it. Pregnancies last for an entire year, and females only give birth once every few years. Their overall life history strategy is more comparable to that of an elephant than it is to another species of fish. This is on account of the fact that they grow really big but reproduce really slowly. We had the misconception that the only food that manta rays consumed was plankton that was found in shallow coastal waters. We would see them swimming around with their mouths open, catching plankton, and we thought that was the end of the story. However, it has been discovered that manta rays do not just inhabit the sunny shallows, they actually dive deep, sometimes even really deep, all the way down to the ocean midnight zone. For decades, scientists have struggled to fully understand the lives of giant manta rays because they are notoriously difficult to locate. Manta rays are known to travel enormous distances, and when they are traveling, they are known to travel enormous distances. Scientists are lucky enough to spot one. It's usually from a boat in shallow water. Thus, for a long time all the data surrounding giant mantas came from observations and only this environment. But as time went on, some researchers had a hunch that there was more to manta ray behavior than they were seeing. To gain more insight, they traveled to Ecuador, where the largest number of giant manta rays are known to congregate. Here they collected small muscle samples from the rays as well as samples of plankton. They wanted to find evidence in the raid. They did this by comparing the nitrogen and carbon isotopes in both the plankton and the muscle tissue of the manta. Nitrogen isotopes, in particular, are very useful because they can tell us about what marine organisms have been eating. This is because the ratio of nitrogen increases with each step up the food web. To put it another way, top predators such as sharks and tuna will have a much higher nitrogen ratio than, for example, plankton, which consume algae. Carbon isotopes, on the other hand, are useful because they can tell us about what marine organisms have been consuming. In telling us the origin of food sources, for example, surface plankton and mopi plankton have different levels of carbon-13. What the researchers found in the case of the giant manta rays was that their chemical signature wasn't correlated to surface plankton. It looked much more like they were eating food from the mopi, a much deeper layer of the ocean. Later, scientists put satellite tags on the manta rays and found that they were diving to depths of 1,400 m. Another group of researchers tagged mantas off the coast of Peru to see what their movements would be like throughout the day, and they discovered that 3 of the rays dove much deeper at night than they did during the day. It is possible that they stayed closer to the surface during the daytime as a way of warming up because they are ectothermic, which means that they are unable to produce much of their own body heat and must rely on the temperature of their surroundings to keep them warm. However, the deep dives aren't the only unexpected movements that these oceanic mantas are making. It also appears that they are moving around their habitats in different ways than we once thought for them. One survey that lasted for 4 years and relied on citizen scientists along the east coast of the United States collected more than 5,000 sightings of giant manta rays and saw them moving hundreds of miles up and down the coast depending on water temperature. At the time, it was believed that giant ocean man rays were courageous travelers who travel great distances to get from one feeding ground to another. This is probably the case with some manays. However, our team just published a paper where they found that giant manta rays are unable to make really long-distance migrations. tracked a manta going 1,000 kilometers, so that's a pretty long distance migration, but maybe not like the white shark who swam from South Africa to Australia. It's not something crazy like that. But a couple years ago a manta showed up in Coco Island, which is it's kind of about in the middle of the ocean off the coast of Costa Rica, but it was a reef manta, which reef man rays are not known to the eastern tropical Pacific, and the closest place it could have come from is like Hawaii, which is thousands of miles away. But other finding and studying these more sedentary populations could open up a new chapter in many research, and it is clear that we still have a lot to learn about them. Researchers who looked at giant manta rays in Mexico and Indonesia discovered that the rays did not swim more than 150 miles from where they were first tagged. They also stuck much closer to their own neighborhood than the researchers had anticipated. Furthermore, they ate a diet that was very specific to their region, which suggests that their non-migration could be due to the abundance of food in those particular locations. Them including something that seems fundamental: can these mysterious creatures change the color of their skin, and if so, how did we only just find out about this spectacular music ability? Mantas are typically described as having one main type of coloration called the chevron, which is a dark navy or black shade over most of their dorsal side with two white triangular patches across their head. Their ventral side or belly is largely white in color with different patterns and patches of black. But when observing captive IND, when the individuals were engaging in intense social interactions or just before they were fed, the researchers were surprised to see the coloration of the giant manta rays rapidly change. The skin around their eyes, mouths, the inside of their calic loess, and the chevron shapes on their backs all rapidly lightened or darkened. This is something that our team is actually looking into. We were always a little bit skeptical about it because we had never seen it before, and just with the way that we conduct our research, as I mentioned earlier, it's quite peculiar. Different than everyone else, so we usually are looking with the drone in the sky, and while you can't necessarily tell who is who based on their dorsal coloration, like usually from the drone I can tell like that was the first one, that was the second one, that's the third one, just because they look slightly different. And I look at hundreds of mantas all the time, but one day I was like, oh, this is a new manta, and we got in and it was the same manta from 2 hours before, but it looked dramatically different. All the color changing was reversed fairly quickly, but researchers really don't know how or why the giant manta rays put on such a show. We do know that they have good visual abilities and large brains, so maybe the color changes have to do with social behaviors, and this ability isn't just limited to the giant ocean manta ray. The smaller reef manta has been observed to change colors too. It's a tantalizing hint that these mantas are more complex than we might give them credit for. Another piece of evidence that suggests the extent of their intelligence is the mirror self-recognition test. This experiment is generally considered to be one of the most reliable ways to evaluate an animal's self-awareness or self-recognition. For land animals such as chimpanzees, it is simple enough to put some kind of marking on the animal that they are unable to see without the assistance of a mirror. If the animal notices the mark on themselves in the mirror and responds to it, it indicates that they are aware that the image in the mirror is their own body. On the other hand, researchers were unable to easily place a marking on manta rays, and the mantas did significantly more repetitive behavior than the chimpanzees. Movements in front of a mirror than in control conditions, and their calic fin movements also increased, almost as if they were making faces at themselves. It is not quite possible to say whether they passed the mirror test, but the results are intriguing nonetheless. Although it is difficult to quantify the intelligence of any animal, especially the giant manai, we do know that they have the largest brain of any fish, and in the Mobula genus, the telencelon is the largest part of the brain, accounting for 61% of the total mass. This is also considered to be the largest part of the brain. The area of the brain associated with memory, learning, complex social behavior, and higher sensory processing. And they don't just have like a big brain because they're a giant animal, they have a big brain for their body size. So we think that manta rays are likely pretty intelligent, probably because they're very social creatures. And manu divers or people who've been in the water with them, they're always like, I get this feeling that the mantle was looking at me. Or we have experiences when they're entangled in fishing line and they just kind of stop swimming and let you just remove it all and then swim off. And really they have like these complex lives and are really intelligent. They're more similar to, sometimes I say, like a dolphin than they are then to like a normal fish. There are so many characteristics of giant manta ray that make them unique: their brains, their behavior, their bodies, the list goes on. But many aspects of their lifestyle also make them increasingly Vulnerable to extinction in 2018, the giant mane was listed as threatened under the US because they consume plankton. They are also more likely to consume large quantities of microplastics, and we simply do not know what the effects of this could be on the health of animals that live for more than 40 years. They are also extremely susceptible to almost every type of fishing, and in habitats that are located in shallow water, they are frequently struck by boats that are traveling at high speeds above them. Furthermore, people have the mistaken belief that manta gill plates provide those who consume them with health and vitality, which is why they are slaughtered in large numbers for the purpose of a single body. But researchers are doing their best to understand Manta behaviors in order to protect them, whether that's creating locations that have special designations as nurseries or monitoring their movement from the Mopeak back up to shallow waters. The more we learn, the better we're able to make sure our activities don't interfere with theirs, and the more chances we'll have to go out in the water and see them gliding by as this year comes to a close. I just wanted to thank each and every one of you for watching and allowing me, and it is literally a dream come true for everyone who works with me on this channel to continue bringing you more and more videos about the topics that we care so much about. Your support, which includes watching, sharing, and liking videos, as well as signing up to our sponsors, keeps the channel alive and thriving.